History is always told by the victors, but on June 6, 1944, the beaches of Normandy did not belong to any one side. Thousands of men woke up that morning not knowing it would be the last day many of them would ever see. This is not a story of glory. This is one man's account of what it felt like to be on the other side of the most consequential invasion in modern history. His name, for this story, is Klaus Hoffmann, a 23-year-old corporal from a small town near Leipzig. He had been stationed at a bunker overlooking the beaches of Normandy for 6 months. He had never seen combat. That was about to change. The night of June 5th was restless. Klaus sat in his bunker, a thick-walled concrete box dug into the bluffs above what the Allies would call Omaha Beach. The mood among the men was oddly relaxed. Intelligence reports suggested no invasion was imminent. The weather was too rough. The tides were wrong. German high command was confident. Around midnight, Klaus stepped outside. There were planes, many planes, but the men assumed they were heading inland. Another bombing run, perhaps. They went back to sleep. Those planes were not heading for factories. They were carrying 13,000 American paratroopers. Operation Overlord had already begun. Klaus just didn't know it yet. At approximately 5:30 in the morning, the world changed. Klaus was shaken awake by his sergeant, who was shouting words that took a moment to process. He stumbled to the narrow slit in the bunker wall, and what he saw made his stomach drop. The entire horizon was ships. Hundreds of ships. What Klaus was looking at was the largest naval armada ever assembled in history. Nearly 7,000 vessels carrying over 150,000 Allied troops. Battleships, destroyers, and landing craft stretched as far as the eye could see. For many German defenders, it was the moment they realized the war had fundamentally shifted. The naval bombardment began almost immediately. German survivors described the noise as something beyond comprehension, a continuous wall of sound that made the earth itself shake. Dust came down from the ceiling of the bunker. One of the men, he couldn't have been more than 18, was crying. Nobody said anything to him. When the shelling paused, Klaus took his position at the machine gun nest. Through the smoke and haze, he could see the bow ramps dropping on the dozens of landing craft and men pouring out into the surf. They were running straight into fire, and they kept coming anyway. The men running onto that beach were the soldiers of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions of the United States Army. In the first wave alone, entire companies were nearly wiped out. Company A of the 116th Infantry lost almost every officer and non-commissioned officer within minutes of landing. But what German command had not anticipated was this. They did not stop. Every time a man fell, another one took his place. By mid-morning, ammunition was running low. Radio lines had been destroyed by the bombing. The defenders were fighting blind, with no idea what was happening anywhere along the coast. By early afternoon, the situation had become desperate. Small groups of American soldiers, fighting their way up the narrow draws and gullies cutting through the bluffs, had begun to flank the bunker positions. Strong points that had seemed impregnable were being taken one by one. Many of the German soldiers defending Normandy were not the ideologically committed troops of Nazi propaganda. Many were conscripts, older men, or soldiers transferred from the grinding devastation of the Eastern Front. Some were not even German. Soldiers from Soviet-occupied territories pressed into service in units historians call the Eastern Legions. They had little choice about being there and little understanding of what they were defending. By the end of June 6th, the Allies had suffered an estimated 10,000 casualties. German losses are harder to verify, but thousands were killed, wounded, or captured along the coast. As the sun set over the channel, Klaus's bunker was surrounded, and a white cloth was raised through the embrasure. The American soldiers who came through the door were young men, tired, covered in sand and blood, shaking just as badly as the men they had come to capture. Both sides looked at each other for a long moment. Then Klaus sat down on the ground. The war, for him, was over. D-Day is remembered, rightly, as a triumph of courage and of the fight against fascism. The men who stormed those beaches changed the course of history, and their sacrifice cannot be overstated. But history also asks us to look at the full picture. not to excuse the regime the defenders served, not to equate their cause with that of the Allies, but to understand that war turns ordinary human beings into instruments of history, often without their consent, and at a cost they spend the rest of their lives paying. June 6, 1944, belongs to the ages. Every man who was there was changed by it forever.